Lovely. So welcome everybody to our second Lunch and Learn. So today we're talking about elderly cats. And when I was putting the Lunch and Learns together, I was trying to think about the topics that we can help most people. How can we reach a lot of people and support them with their cats? And I don't know whether we did an elderly cat webinar. The replay is free. You can catch it on our YouTube channel. And again, I talked in there about Pickle, because she was my experience of an elderly cat, and she was very old for very long. Those of you that kind of know the backstory about Naturally Cats know that she was the inspiration behind Naturally Cats, and she taught me a phenomenal amount. She led me to Reiki and the self-selection, all of it. She led me to everything, and I'll be eternally grateful to her. But she was a very, very poorly cat. But old age doesn't necessarily mean poorly. Old age doesn't mean deterioration, and I think that's something that we need to be aware of, because this sounds so cheesy, but age is just a number, and you can have a 17-year-old cat like Pickle who is very reserved and doesn't have a lot of movement. She's not interested in a lot. I've also seen 17-year-old cats that look like they're kittens, and they act just as crazy. So age is just a number. And, when we talk about cats, if you look up online, I haven't got slides for today. I've got some notes, but it's not a presentation type talk. So, if you look online for cat like age charts, they all compare it to human years, which I think is kind of irrelevant, because the cat is, the age of the cat, and you deal with what they present to you and what they show you. But, when you look online, there are parameters, I suppose. So, for example, like 7 to 10 years is classed as mature, 11 to 14 is senior, and 15 plus is geriatric. Now, I think that word's terrible, personally, geriatric. I mean, when you compare that to human, it's probably where I am. But like I said, it's really about how they represent themselves, what they show to you, how they show up for you. That's what we need to consider. That's when age is something we've got to be aware of. So one of the things for me is the best way to determine if you're dealing with an elderly cat is to look at them, and to notice changes. So a lot of people, behaviorists and vets, will say, if you notice any changes in your cat, it should be a bit of a flag. It should be a bit of a, okay, what's going on here? And it's exactly the same with humans. If you're having a bad day, or you're just not feeling quite right, you're off your appetite, it's a warning. It's something to investigate and look out for. So with our cats, we need to be aware of any changes in behavior, any changes in their appetite, and also changes in their kind of like mobility. Right, let's have a look at the chat. Let's see what we've got. Jan says she's got 2 Maine Coons, 8 and 6. In my work, I groom a lot of elderly, severely matted cats, and can't be I can never say that word. Never be put under by the vets for dematting. I have had one die on my groom. Oh my God, Jan, always risky whether sedated by a vet or whether I work with them without sedation using her. Oh my Jesus. Yeah. So you're going to deal with, so Jan's a groomer, she's going to be dealing with elderly cats. We've got some ideas I've got some oils to share with you. Like you said, herbs, great. 8 and 6, great age, actually, 8, I would say, to start almost doing like a baseline, so get a notebook or something, a document on your phone. This is what I wish I'd done with Pickle, and I'll be doing with Leo, is basically, doing like, almost like ground zero, where are they now? So for example, 8-year-old, look at their mobility, look at their fur condition, look at their teeth, do an all over health check, basically, head to the tip of the tail and everything kind of in between. So, I would advocate making a list of, I don't know, say 10 things you want to look for. So do they have any like build up in their ears or their eyes? If you can do a teeth check, always advocate that. What is their coat condition like? What is their movement and mobility like? How is their appetite? What is their interaction with others in the home? So like their relationships with people, what are they like? And how is their kind of mental health? So do they play? Do they sleep a lot? And you can do this like once a year. It's a really simple but actually quite effective way to notice if your cat is deteriorating in any way. So one of the things that I try to view cats is through the lens of the four paws. So we did a webinar, you can catch the replay via the shop, Four Paws to Perfection. And we looked at spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. So for me, those are the four elements that we should be considering for our cats. And to be quite honest, for ourselves, what is their mental health like? What is their physical health like? What is their emotional health like? And what is their spiritual health like? Now, I appreciate the last two, emotional and spiritual, might not be that obvious. But if anything, those two are the most important as your cat gets older. So, for example, spiritual and emotional are very, very closely connected. So are they still able to engage with you? Do you still feel connected with them? Have they withdrawn? Also physical touch comes into this, because some cats, as they get older, they don't tolerate as much physical touch, but there are other ways to still bond with them and connect with them and have time with them. So anybody that does any yoga or meditation, even some mindfulness or deep breathing, when we are aware of our own energy, it helps us to connect with our cats. When we're all like super stressed and going at 50 miles an hour, our energy is very much, fraught and tense and stressed, and the cats will pick up on that. So I firmly believe that cats are like little sponges, and they can soak up our energy, soak up our emotions. So in order to be aware of your cat's spiritual and emotional health, it's really important you look after your own. By helping yourself, you're going to help them. So one of the things I mentioned in the webinar that we did a few months ago now was about, make sure you ask for help. Make sure you take time away. I struggled a lot with Pickle. She was my baby girl. She was my baby. And to see her unwell, to hear her howling at God knows what time, and the yowl that would come from her, it would literally shatter my heart. It was painful to hear. And I didn't want to leave her. We didn't have a honeymoon for 3 years after getting married, because I wouldn't leave her, And what I found was that when we had a friend, one of Rob's friends, we had a wedding, and we went away just overnight, and I was petrified of leaving her, but it was one of the best things that I did, because when we came back, I talk about a sparkle jar. We've all got a sparkle jar of things that make us happy. Spending time with family, getting out in nature, watching a film, having a bath, whatever it may be. It's like your happy jar, if you like. And when you're caring for an elderly cat, a lot is taken out of that sparkle jar, because you give a lot, because you love them, because you care for them, because you want to help them. But you can't help them if that jar is empty, and you need to do things to top it up. So looking after your mental and emotional health will actually help them as well. And that's something that I don't know if we're making the connection with, where the vets are saying, when you're dealing with an elderly cat, your self-care will affect them, and that needs to be one of your priorities. So let's look at the physical and the mental. So the physical one is the obvious. That's like the easy one. You can see if your cat is walking a little bit slower. You can see if they're struggling to jump up on the bed, and these are things that you can put in place. So we had little steps. They were actually dog steps, because there weren't cat steps at the time, but now you can probably get all sorts. We had steps going up to the sofa. We had steps going up to the bed. We actually had them in the spare room. Not that she ever went in there very often, but we had them everywhere, because her mobility was limited by her hips and her legs. So have a think about, do they need help? Have you seen them jump up on the worktop or the sofa or the bed or wherever it may be recently, or have you not seen that in a while? Do they need extra mobility support? So yes, there are things you can put in place, like in the home, like I said, little steps. You might also need to consider, can they actually do the staircase in your home? Because if not, you might need to make adjustments and establish their territory downstairs or upstairs, wherever you have them. But have a think about, what is their mobility like? And when we talk about mobility, yes, there are things to do in the house, but also you can help the cat's body. So complementary and alternative treatments, I'm a big fan, huge fan. And that's not about saying they're a replacement for veterinary care, because they're absolutely not. It's about complementary. It's about in addition to. It's all about having that holistic approach. So your cat may be on painkillers or whatever medication. There are other things that you could do. So when we talk about mobility, have a think about cat massage and acupressure. Now they seem really, really simple, but actually they're very effective. So you don't need to train in acupressure. Yes, you can, obviously. Traditional Chinese medicine is wow. I mean, there's such a wealth of knowledge and information. I was liken it to astrology. You can continuously learn about traditional Chinese medicine, but use your intuition. See where you're guided. If you're stroking your cat and you notice there's a bit of like a lump, on their chest or around their hip, just gently use like the palm of the middle of your fingers or the palm of your hand, whatever's comfortable for you and your cat, and just gently massage it, just gently move it, palpate the area, see what they'll tolerate. When cats are older, energy, chi, whatever you want to call it, I don't want to get too woo-woo, but as with all of us, there's energy flowing all the way up and down, in and out, and if their mobility has reduced and they're sleeping a lot more, they're sat in the bed or on the chair a lot more, that energy is not going to be moving or flowing as well. So you might need to give a little bit of help. So think about massaging a point. If you don't feel a lump or a bump, that's fine. Still have a think about, when you're giving your cat strokes and cuddles around their face, rather than just sort of giving them a couple of scritches, and you just sort of like, oh, is that cute? Is that nice? Just take a breath and bring your energy down a little, and then just slow your movement. Gently massage around their mouth, their face, their cheeks, whatever they'll let you touch, rather than just a simple stroke down the cat. Be more mindful with it. See if you can notice any protrusions or any indentations, any changes in their body. When you stroke them all the way down, I very rarely am allowed to do that on Leo, but whenever I do, I'm always like, my spidey senses kick in, and I'm kind of like, what can I feel, all the way down. Now I've noticed Leo's got a lump on one of his ribs. We've had it checked by the vet, nothing. But so I think it's energy, it's around his lungs. Obviously he's got asthma. So I'm learning about acupressure to learn how to kind of, shift it and move it and help that energy flow. But regardless of the energy point, it gets the blood flowing, so even if you don't believe in acupressure, the massage element with elderly cats is great. It increases their blood flow, it stimulates the muscles, it wakes the body up a little, which sometimes they need that sort of stimulation. So that's kind of the physical one. Now mental, Pickle was never ever a playful cat, ever. No matter what type of toy I tried, she would look at me as if to say, like, you gotta be joking. You want me to chase that? You want me to engage with that? No, never. She wasn't a very active cat. She was always quite sedentary, actually. But again, things that you learn when you're going through it. For mental health, it is really key. Now, there are simple ways to help cats with this, elderly cats. So for example, like puzzle feeders. If you don't feed dry food, you can still get like something called a licky mat, which means that you're not just putting the food down straight away in the bowl straight in front of the cat. They've got to have a sniff around and, see how they get the food out. So puzzle feeders or licky mats, it's brilliant mental stimulation for cats. When it comes to mental health, have a think about the fact that a cat's tolerance levels will change. So I'm an empath, I'm a highly sensitive person. I struggle with like loud noises and with groups and things. And I get to the point where, I'm overstimulated. So the TV, for example, for me, or if I've had a lot of calls and had a lot of screen time, I get like a ringing in my ears and I get a bit of a headache. And one of the signs of like cognitive dysfunction syndrome in cats is that they don't tolerate noise as well. So we realized that at times when Pickle would be howling and doing this yowl, it was because almost she was overstimulated, and we noticed that she started to actually hide under a blanket, which she never used to do. And it was almost like a light bulb moment. I said to Rob, I think she wants a bit more peace and quiet. She can't tolerate the interaction with humans, the noise around the home as much. So, have a think about, do you have time where your elderly cat has a bit of peace and quiet? It's not always about, having the radio on or the TV on and giving them interaction. Sometimes they need a bit of quiet time. Sometimes they need to just be with themselves and to sleep. Elderly cats will sleep a lot more. My grams always used to say your body heals when you sleep. And if you think about as cats get older, that's going to be necessary. It's going to be essential for them. Jan says a Denman handbag brush is great for massage and groom combined, stimulating hair growth, blood flow, connection, etc. Brilliant. Yours demand it after breakfast. Lovely. I think that's great. And thank you for the recommendation, Jan. That's brilliant. Like you said, brushing, again, it's going to be key. If you've got an elderly cat, Pickle could never reach her back end very well, So there was a post I put out this week and about, live life and clean your butt, and somebody posted, I think it was Bob posted and said, that they've had to walk around with a wipe to try and clean the cats. Like, yeah, we've all been there. I had to start with Pickle a lot. She couldn't always clean herself. And bless her, towards the end of her life, she couldn't make it to the tray. So we'd come home and find the sofa wet. It was hard going. We had to clean the sofa. We'd come home, we had mats all around the underneath of the litter tray. We had a puppy training litter tray. It was only about that deep, absolutely huge. I think it was 1.5 meters by 1.5 meters, like massive, in our dining room. We'd come home and she still had weed on the mat and not in the tray. And I'm like, oh, come on, And it's the little things like this that are hard to deal with when you're dealing with an elderly cat. So be aware of litter trays. Can they still get in them? If you've got a covered litter tray, I definitely advocate taking the top off, because elderly cats can't move as quickly. So they need to be aware of what's going on around them. And as Jan mentioned, you might need to groom them. And again, the grooming is a lovely way of bonding. It's a wonderful tool to strengthen the relationship between human and cat. So, if your cat doesn't like as much touch from you, maybe they've got a bit of pain somewhere, if they will accept a gentle groom, you're going to have a lovely bonding exercise between the two of you, and you're going to help to keep their coat clean and obviously, distribute the oils and everything onto their skin. So it's a really great opportunity to connect with them again. So as you mentioned at the beginning, have a look and try and do a baseline, see where your cat is today, regardless of how old they are, see how they are today. Is there anything that you're a bit like, I'm going to be aware of that, or I want to keep an eye on that? Sorry, just checking the text. And be aware of that. So we talked about mobility. We've talked about, mental health. Now the mental health bit, just one final point to mention is that they might become more vocal. And this is really common, and you might not know why they're doing it, and there might be no rhyme or reason to it, but just know that it's common. When you start to notice changes in your cat, if you think it's due to old age, always get a vet check. Make sure that there's nothing else untoward going on, because obviously, like with humans, the older we get, the more the body puts up a fight. And elderly cats can be prone to pancreatitis, hypothyroidism, diabetes. So regular checkups is really really essential. And also you can kind of monitor with your vet how the cat is doing. So we would take Pickle once a year, and it was great because the vet could sometimes see what we couldn't. When you're seeing the cat every day, it's actually really advantageous to have like an outsider's perspective, because I never forget once, our vet who's currently on maternity, we took Pickle in and she said, oh wow. And I said, well, what is it? She went, her coat doesn't look great. And I really respected the honesty, because I was like, I hadn't really recognized that. I was so focused on the fact that she couldn't get in the litter tray. We were having issues with her weeing all over the sofa. I hadn't even noticed the coat deterioration. So don't be fearful of taking your cat to the vet, of having an outsider's perspective and having someone else see them regularly. It can be really helpful. So they are likely to sleep more, and that's not a bad thing. Try to make sure that people in the home are respectful that you're dealing with an elderly cat. In fact, that kind of goes without saying, because if you've got a cat that's 3 years old or 15 years old, we should be respecting the cat anyway. If you've got young family coming in to the home, you know, you want to, I would like to think that they are respectful of the cat. They don't kind of, you know, bundle straight in and go to stroke it if it's asleep, you know, and it's the same with elderly cats. So they might be less tolerant of family members as well. So again, just bear that in mind. Pickle was never very trusting anyway, but she was even less so when people would come to the home. So you'd see this grumpy face, you know, just kind of like with this stare at people. And, you know, my friends and family would comment, oh, she's not very cuddly. I'm like, no, she's not. You know, but when it's just me and her, we have an amazing relationship. She was very, very cuddly, you know. Cats aren't here for our enjoyment. They're not here to please us, you know. And if everybody wants to have a cuddly cat, then, you know, send them my way. I'll give them a slap on their face. I'm joking. But seriously, you know, if people have expectations of your cat, you might need to have an open conversation with them and say, look, you know, they're a little bit older, or we try and leave her be, or we wait for her to come to us, or whatever it may be. But it's just as important when you're dealing with elderly relatives. You know, you talk to family and say, oh, we saw granddad and he's not looking too great, we might need to do X, Y, and Z. Just the same for your cats. Have that conversation with your family. Don't be afraid to speak up on behalf of your cat. What are we doing? How are we doing for time? Oh, look at that, right on time today. What else have we got? Okay, so I mentioned about vocalization, and just a note on that whilst we're talking about, you know, the relationship with cats. You know, don't punish the cat for excessive vocalization, and that can be really hard because it can be really challenging to deal with day in, day out. But ultimately, your cat's trying to communicate something to you, or it's trying to cope with its situation. So, you know, I mentioned it before, cognitive dysfunction syndrome in cats, it's called a number of different things. It's kind of like old age or Alzheimer's, you know, for cats. Again, getting veterinary diagnosis and veterinary support is really key. But you might be dealing with a cat who just yowls at really bizarre times, or you might be sat watching TV or whatever. So just, you know, treat them with love and with kindness, you know, mute or quiet noise if there's noise going on around them. Sometimes they might need reminders as to where the food station is. Sometimes it could be because the cat's hungry, but they've actually forgotten where to go for food. So you might find that, you know, you need to sort of put the food bowl under their face so that they've got the smell, or, you know, take them to the food station and see if they need to eat. So the food station, you know, this is like wherever you feed your cat, you might need to elevate it. We did this with Pickle. We ended up bringing her bowl up a little so that she didn't have to bend down as much. And the question that we had actually was about nutrition. So let's cover that now. So I was asked whether, you know, you need to have an old age type diet for a cat. Now, mixed views on this. What I'll say is, you know, I'm not a vet. I'm not a cat nutritionist. I have spoken to my vet, my cat specific vet this morning, just to get her perspective, because I'm going to talk to you about being from a cat owner's perspective, and I wanted to get her intake. So, you know, cat food companies are great at marketing things so that we buy stuff. You know, what I would say is, when it comes to your cat and old age, yes, their dietary requirements may change. So again, it's like humans, you know, there is no sweeping statement to say, yes, feed elderly cat food. What I would say is, in my experience, Pickle would eat more often. She would eat little and more often. She wouldn't have the 3 meals a day. It was almost like her body couldn't tolerate processing that much food. You know, she would eat smaller meals more frequently. Depending on whether you're feeding dry, wet, or raw, depends on whether you need to look at additional supplements. You know, a dry food diet, if you've got an elderly cat, they're unlikely to transition to wet or raw. You might be able to do it. It might take a bit longer. It's not impossible, but obviously elderly cats don't like change. In fact, you know, no cats like change, but elderly cats are going to particularly find it more difficult or more of a challenge to adjust. So if you've been feeding dry food, you know, or a low quality wet, you may need to consider giving supplements, joint care, something to support the free radicals in the body as the body deteriorates. So, you know, with Pickle, we would always offer her spirulina and barley grass, primarily actually from a joint care perspective, because it would help with pain relief and her arthritis. So we would have I'd offer barley grass powder or spirulina, never the two together, one or the other. She preferred spirulina. We used to get it everywhere. So she didn't like it mixed with any water or a carrier oil. She just liked the powder neat. So she'd start licking it from a saucer. It'd be all over her face. It'd be all over the duvet or wherever she was. You know, Rob would walk in with this look of like, oh, you too. I'm like, she's having some, you know, it was great. So what I would say is spirulina and barley grass are great. They are such a boost for the immune system. Like I said, spirulina helps with pain relief, and they support the kind of release of, you know, and then the removal of free radicals in the body. So they're really brilliant sort of supplements to offer. Now, I always use self-selection, so I never added anything to Pickle's food. We would always, like I said, put it on a saucer and offer it to her. So like I said, you could mix it with a little bit of water or a little bit of, for example, like organic sunflower oil, not the oil that you get in a supermarket. But macerated oils are a wonderful option to offer to elderly cats, because the fats, you know, in the oils are brilliant. So it helps with brain function, you know, it helps with the digestion. And for example, like calendula macerated oil is fabulous. It's an anti-inflammatory. So if they've got any pain or any inflammation in their body, it's going to help to reduce that if they select it. Okay. Hemp macerated oil and nettle are also great, because again, they're full of, you know, iron and nutrients and things. And obviously with the hemp, it's quite calming. So if there is a little bit of mental deterioration, you know, something like hemp's going to help with that. It's going to help to keep the cat a bit calmer, help to deal with the change. So one thing we need to be mindful of is that, you know, as the cats get older, they are adjusting. They're adjusting to their body being different, to their reaction to their environment being different. And also as a predator and a prey animal, your cat may have always been an indoor cat. It may not have, oh, Leslie, I have to say, it's so gorgeous to see you sat with your little buddy there, who now looks like he's very happy. So distracted. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So you may find that just like with humans, you know, your cat is adjusting to being older. As a predator and a prey animal, they're still going to feel threatened, but they know that they can't move as quickly. So they might be more heightened, they might be more aware, they might also feel more threatened. So they might be more reactive to noises or other animals in the home. They might be more aggressive, because rather than have to deal with an interaction, an altercation, sorry, where they previously would have, you know, had a fight and walked away, they may react aggressively with hissing or growling, because they're trying to say, you know, back off basically, but they know that they can't fight because they're not physically able to. So, you know, it's something to bear in mind when you see those changes. It could be the cat's way of coping. Oh, it's your blind cat, Leslie. Oh, he's gorgeous. He's gorgeous. Absolutely. It's such a pleasure to have him with us. So let me just have a quick look over my notes, see how we're getting on. So we talked about the environment, talked about the family. You know, it's really important to communicate with people if you think something's going on. Getting your vet involved is also key. We talked about puzzle feeders, licky mats, obviously there's treat balls as well. And obviously it goes without saying there's toys. You know, don't think that just because your cat's a little bit older or they're sleeping more that they're not interested in play. They may not instigate it, but they still might be interested. So, you know, don't, this is going to sound harsh, but don't let them just sit on the sofa and get old. You know, it's our responsibility as their guardian to give them the best life that we can. And sometimes that might mean that we support them and we do stuff first. So, you know, we get a toy or we get a new treat, or, you know, we turn off our distractions and give them our attention. You know, that might be something that can help to heal them in that moment. So just going back to the food, when I spoke to my vet friend, she mentioned to me about, you know, supplements to help with the diet. So we talked about barley grass and spirulina. Now it might be that there's a particular medical condition that means, you know, you need to adjust the diet. They might need more fat. You know, if they're dealing with hypothyroidism, for example, that can affect weight. If they're dealing with kidney issues, you might need to be aware of, bone and phosphorus in the diet if they're fed raw. It's really hard to give you a one size fits all answer. It really depends on each cat. Ultimately, if they're in a good condition, I wouldn't change the food. We didn't feed Pickle an old age diet. We continued to feed her at the time, Lily's Kitchen, and Perform. She was on half and half. Because whenever we went to raw fully, she got very constipated. She had issues with her colon. So we fed half and half. But, if your cat is doing well on the food that they're on, as long as it's the best quality you can afford, I would stick with it. I would be very reluctant to make changes if you're dealing with an elderly cat. They've got enough change going on anyway. And if you're offering botanicals, that can help to support the healing of the body, So as good cat mums and dads, because you're part of the Naturally Cats community, I know that you're trying to do the best for your cat. So I know that they're fed the best that you can afford right now, or the best that you're aware of right now, so continue with that. Don't get caught up in the marketing of, now the cat switch from 10 to 11, you've got to go up from, junior to senior, or whatever they say that it should be. I wouldn't worry about it. I didn't. We won't be with Leo. I didn't with Pickle. I would just say, investigate the best brand that you can and stick with that. Change with food could be very unsettling for elderly cats. It can actually be quite upsetting to the body, their digestion, let alone them in terms of their mental health. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you want to bring in extra supports, extra bits of a boost to the nutrition, you could always do, for example, simple changes like with treats. If you're giving the dreaded brand of Dreamies, you could potentially switch to freeze-dried. So it's not a big change in terms of day-to-day food, but it's a slightly better quality treat. Or you could try a raw treat, a little chicken heart cut up, or a piece of venison cut up, so rather than replacing the meals, which could potentially stress the cat, just add in some extra treats as a nutrition boost. So mentioned before, complementary treatments. Now, elderly cats, like with us humans, really benefit from other treatments. So for example, we mentioned acupressure. There's acupuncture. Now that all depends on the cat, whether you've got access to bring a practitioner into the home or take your cat to the practitioner. With elderly cats, I wouldn't have thought they would travel as well. So if you can find a practitioner that comes to the home to do some form of treatment, I would always advocate doing it that way rather than taking the cat out of its familiar environment. But there are so many options. I mean, there's acupuncture, acupressure, there's light therapy. I've been working with a client of mine who's using something called a Fatizo. I know there's other brands as well, where it's red light laser therapy. So if you've got a cat that's got stiff joints, it's got painful areas, you could investigate something like that. With all of these things, you might do a bit of behavior modification. So Fatizo's got quite a loud beep when it's ready to go, and it might unsettle the cat, so just see how they react to it. But there's physiotherapy, Reiki, obviously, massage we've mentioned, homeopathy, crystals. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll find that we've got some lives with different practitioners. So we've got one about crystals, we've got one about homeopathy. On our website, www.naturallycats.co.uk, there are some of our paid webinars where you can catch the replay. So we've got one about, we've got the 4 Paws to Perfection, and we've got the Cat Chakra Meridian replay. So if you are looking in other ways to support your cat, and we talked about the emotional and spiritual, these complementary treatments are going to definitely help to boost that. So, if you always see your cat sat on your bed or on your, near your bedside table, and you've got a piece of rose quartz, have a think about, do you need to get a bigger piece? Do you need to cleanse the bit that you've got there and leave it on the floor somewhere where the cat can get to, more easily, and they can sit with the healing energies of the crystals? When it comes to crystals, what I would say is, if you put anything down, don't put it in the cat bed. Make sure that the cat has got an area where they can go, where they're not around anything that's energy based. Equally with things like homeopathy and with the botanical remedies, use self-selection. So if you're going to add things to water, make sure they've got a fresh water source down. Don't add anything to food. Particularly with elderly cats, when you start to add things to food, it can quite quickly cause a food aversion, and that's not something you want to be dealing with an elderly cat. So for example, if you put down, I don't know, say for example, say you've used chamomile dried herb and you've made a tea, right? This is a great option to use with elderly cats. Get a dried herb, put it in some water, hot water, and make a tea. Let it steep, then let the water cool, and then put it in a saucer and see if the cat wants to ingest it. But if you start adding that to their food, the cat's got no choice. It needs to eat food to survive. So it's going to potentially ingest the chamomile if it doesn't need it. Now, if the cat smells the chamomile, but they still are hungry and need to eat, it's going to cause an issue, with them sort of mentally speaking. So offer supplements, offer remedies, but use it alongside all their day-to-day. Give them a choice. Give them a choice in how they help themselves. So the last thing to mention is, with me, I'm a big fan of herbs, and obviously I'll talk a little bit about essential oils. So if you get the aromatic cat, we're talking here about remedies for old age. Obviously, we've got the 40 botanical profiles. For essential oils, what I would say is I always put 1 drop of a high quality oil on a piece of fabric. You can use oils in different ways. We're not going to get into that now. I'm conscious of time, and I am going to finish on time today. So I would say put 1 drop of an oil on a piece of fabric. So I use a cut up shirt, one of my husband's old work shirts. You can use like face cloths, anything. Cotton fabric's great because the oil will soak into the fibers. So there are 4 that I would recommend for old age. So one would be essential oil. I was reading my notes. One would be sandalwood, ylang ylang, geranium, and frankincense. So those 4 are very emotionally supportive, very balancing, very nurturing. And the ylang ylang is really great if you've got excessive vocalization. It can help to calm the cat. Now, obviously, there are there's a whole host of remedies that you could offer, and what might work for one cat might not work for another, but try it, experiment. So 1 drop down on a piece of fabric, put the fabric on the floor, middle of the front room, and just leave your cat to it. Let them do what they need to do. So I mentioned about the chamomile tea, and it's the same with hydrosols, whether you buy them online or whether you want to make your own in terms of like the tea, try things. Get some, if you've got some chamomile, if you've got some peppermint tea, if you've got some nettle tea, try different concentrations. Steep it for 5 minutes, steep it for 30 minutes. Let it cool, put a bit in a saucer, leave it on the floor. See if your cat will like it and ingest it. It's not going to do them any harm if you're using self-selection principles. And then the last bit to share with you is about, so we talked about macerated oils, essential oils. I want to talk to you about herbs. So in our shop on the website, we've got an elderly cat garden, and it's a real mixture of herbs because, it's trying to support those four paws, the spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. We have got a garden, for pain. So if you know your cat's in pain, try that one. But basically, pain and the elderly cat are really great options to offer. So the elderly cat garden has got chamomile, peppermint, nettle, violet leaf, calendula, and lemon balm. So, you've got the calendula to reduce inflammation. You've got the violet leaf to support the changes that are going on for them emotionally. As I said, chamomile soothing. Talking about remedies, valerian's a great herb. I would have it in every garden, and I have toyed with that idea because, it's great to help with physical pain. And it's also, it can be really calming. You can call it sedative, but, when you're dealing with an anxious cat as they're getting older, it might be helpful. So like I said, the elderly cat garden you can get from our website. Ultimately, what's the key takeaway? Key takeaway is, get to know your cat. And I know that we all think that we do, but when it comes to dealing with a cat as they get older, it's helpful to put that practical filter on. Write that list of 10 things you want to monitor. Like I said at the beginning, get them checked regularly by the vet, keep them involved with their care. And obviously remedies are going to help whether they're, 1 year old, 10 years old, or 20 years old. Offer as much or as little as you can. Any exposure to remedies, if they choose to work with them, is going to be really beneficial. And don't be too hard on yourself. We're all doing the best that we can for our cats, regardless of their age. We're trying to do the best we can for their diet, their activity, So if you're dealing with a particularly challenging elderly cat, take some time out. you know, take some time away from the home, ask friends and family to come in and look after their cat if possible, but take some time out to top up your sparkle jar, because your energy and your emotions will also affect the cat. So just have a think about your self-care, which will then ultimately help them with theirs. Look at that, I'm done. I have so much, obviously with all cat stuff, there are, I mean, I could talk for hours, you know, I'm looking down at notes to keep me on point, to make sure I talk about relevant things. Like I said, don't forget there is the elderly cat webinar replay, which is free on our YouTube channel. Some of this might be repeated, but you might find other bits in there as well, so feel free to check it out. I really hope you've enjoyed the Lunch and Learn session. Thank you so much for being here and being part of me, being here and being part of this with me. And if you're catching it on replay, I really hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing you next week. So next week we've got raw food. I will share with everybody what we did to switch Pickle and Leo, the brands that I recommend, the new brands that I'm finding. It's going to be great. So sign up will be released in a couple of days. So I look forward to seeing you all again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you to those of you that have had cats on screen. It makes my my work so much easier to see them. I hope you found some useful hints and tips. Thank you, Leslie, and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, everyone, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.